What's up, everybody? Hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Zach and I were just talking before the podcast started. Both of us had a good Thanksgiving as well. Zach is super excited that the Cowboys won.
Yeah. That's the only reason. Well, not the only reason, but the primary reason today is a good day. Thanksgiving was good. Dallas, it was close, but they won and it looked good. And not only was the Cowboys game good, we had 3 really good games, I'd say, yesterday, which isn't usually the norm. Not the Bills, I thought it was going to be a much,
The Bills-Lions game, dude, that was a really good game.
It was. I thought it was going to overtime, and I really wanted it to go to overtime, because it would have let us, we would have segued right into dinner. And then, just as soon as you're done dinner, the Cowboys game would have been on. And then after that, you got the night game. But it was all right. I figured the Bills would win. I didn't think it was going to be that close, but it was good. I like to see that. The Lions might be seeing some light at the end of the woods.
I think so, man. I mean, they've been playing really well lately. And this game, like, they played against a good team, and they were coming through with clutch play after clutch play. But, at the end of that game, man, I feel like Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen just pulled something out from within deep.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To come out and get that victory. I feel like, you can see them after the game, hugging, right? Because I feel like they both knew what it took, out of them to get that win. And Diggs, he was having a rough game.
This is the second week in a row that happened.
Yeah, he had some drops, but also I feel like they were really double covering him in that first half, especially. It kind of led to Isaiah McKenzie having a good game because he was left open a bunch of times. He made some good grabs too, but Isaiah McKenzie getting I think he had 10 targets in this game.
Yeah.
Not something that you would normally see. But I think it's partly because they were not going to let Stephon Diggs beat them. But at the end of the day, they did.
Yeah. What's his name? Josh Allen was doing his best Patrick Mahomes, impression. Obviously it wasn't 13 seconds. I think it was 25 seconds. But, they were exercising some demons there on Thanksgiving, showing that they can do it too. That was obviously the talk. At any time there's 20-some seconds left in a game and a team's getting the ball back, everyone talks about that Patrick Mahomes drive. It's like, can they beat Patrick Mahomes? And I wasn't expecting to go right down the field, 36-yard reception, but Josh Allen put it where it needed to be. And, that was the game. So good on the Bills for doing that. It's too bad. I wanted the Lions to win just because, you always root for the underdog, but I'm okay with the Bills winning too. It's not like I don't like the Bills. The Bills are a very likable team, and they're very good.
They are likable, and as a Jets fan, I don't want to like them. But
I forgot when
I see Josh Allen, I'm a Stephon Diggs fan too.
Yeah.
And when I see the way that Josh plays, he doesn't care, dude. He's hurt, but he's just the way he's getting tackled. It was funny. They were interviewing Sean McDermott, and they're like, "What do you want to see Josh Allen do better?" He's like, "Yeah, slide."
There's no such thing as slide. If you're playing Madden, his X button is broken. There's no sliding.
100%. He doesn't have that. He doesn't do it. He just wants to get that extra yard every single time.
I love to see it. I love watching him play.
Yeah, 100%, man. Amari St. Brown, dude, 9 catches on 10 targets for 122 yards and a touchdown. The last 3 games, 10 for 119, 7 for 76, and now 9 for 122. The dude's a beast. And the best part about St. Brown in PPR is that every single game, if he's going to have a 100-yard game, it's going to be 9 catches for 100 yards or 10 catches for 100 yards. It's not like he's giving you 6 for 120. It's 9 for 120.
6 for 120 isn't even bad. There are guys that put up 3 for 109.
No, 6 for 120 is great, but the point is that those extra 3 points that he gives you in PPR, because all of his catches are for 10, averaging 10 yards. So it's good. In PPR it's preferred. But he's averaging 10 targets a game over the last 5 weeks. So this dude is a high end to mid wide receiver one every single he's a mid wide receiver.
It sounds so weird, but
he's a high end to mid wide receiver one.
Instead of calling them mid, we'll call him solid.
Solid wide receiver one.
Yeah.
Solid.
I think that's good.
There you go.
And look at his schedule coming up too. He's got Jacksonville next week and then Minnesota the week after.
Minnesota.
You could be eating good. You know what I'm saying?
Minnesota.
Rubbing your hands together.
Minnesota.
Yeah. Minnesota is a great defense to have your players go.
Dude, Minnesota is Swiss cheese, man. Mac Jones almost threw for 400 yards against them. And he almost got that 3rd touchdown. And
he should have
overturned that Hunter Henry call. Absolutely ridiculous, man. I don't understand that one at all.
For me, that's a touchdown. You saw the way he had the ball. His hands hit the ground and he didn't lose, possession. Maybe it popped out afterwards, but isn't it once you have control and you're over the plane? Like,
and he had his hand under the ball too. It's just like,
so that's what I'm saying.
what is
So
he
it's
supposed to do?
if you have control of the ball and it's over the plane, all you have to do as a ball carrier is break the plane. We've seen that many times where guys just jump over
Travis
the
Kelce
pile.
just
They just stick the ball out.
That was even worse, the Travis Kelce one, because the ball flew out of his hands when he hit the turf.
Right.
Yeah, I don't.
That was a game-changing call too, because that would have put them up 30-23. Presumably, if Nick Folk makes the extra point, that would have changed the game. And I'm not saying I would expect the Patriots to win then. The Vikings were doing what they wanted on offense too. But that was a big call. And I was upset because, Hunter Henry, nobody had him in the starting lineup. It's not like anybody had him in the starting lineup, but he deserved that touchdown. And Mac Jones, he was playing really well too. So I don't know what that call was about. I had a whole discussion with my buddies in a group chat. It was just
I started Mac Jones in our league yesterday, and
that's right.
I was hoping for that. I mean, he had a really good game, but even without that third touchdown, but if he had that third touchdown, he would have had close to a 30-point game and 4-point passing touchdown scoring. I would have been like, oh my goodness, this is amazing.
Mac Jones was doing his best Jimmy G impression.
Dude, it's so funny. I'm gonna bench him next week though.
Yeah. You called it. You said the matchup was what you wanted, and you were right. So give yourself a little pat on the back there.
Defense, man, like you can literally start anybody against them. Like it really doesn't matter. Just start anybody. Okay, let's see. DeAndre Swift, man, still not getting the work we'd like to see. He saw a small uptick in work. That's good, but like it's still not quite there yet. 5 carries for 19 yards, 4 catches for 24 yards. I think he had like 8 targets in this game, which is legit. 34% snap share though. Like I would not depend on Swift if I'm trying to win a championship or make the playoffs. He did get a touchdown nullified in this game where his knee was down. That's how Amari St. Brown caught the touchdown on 4th down. It was on that same drive. But can he be a piece of a championship run? Maybe. But that playing time needs to go up big time right now. The good thing is that he outtouched Justin Jackson 12-6, and but we still need Justin Jackson to just go away.
Yeah, he needs to go away. But the thing about DeAndre Swift, he had that 2-point conversion that kind of salvaged his day. 10 points, you'll take it for what you've been getting from DeAndre Swift because he hasn't been doing much for you at all. So 10 points, if you've been starting him and you need to start him like me, you'll take 10
points without a touchdown, right?
Yeah.
So that's not terrible.
That's okay. So obviously we'd love to see him get more carries on the ground. But that seems to be Jamal Williams, backfield at this point in terms of getting the carries. The thing that was encouraging to me that I think could help buoy his value is he was on the field for 2-minute snaps pretty much exclusively. If you watched at the end of the game and heading into halftime, he got all the snaps, it looked like. And he was getting a bunch of targets too. Now he only caught 4 of 8. If he caught a couple more targets, it would have been a much better day. But and he had that touchdown nullified, so that was just too bad. I was sitting there eating my first course while DeAndre Swift scored that. I was like, yes. And then they called it back. It wasn't the best time right there, but it was all right.
I'm done.
Yeah,
but I don't want to eat anymore.
But the thing about DeAndre Swift, now he got the receiving work, which is encouraging. If he can keep that up, I think that he could return to fantasy relevance. At this point, he's I'd say with the receiving work right now was what we saw yesterday was a high end RB3 performance. That's just me.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see it too. And I'm okay starting him as like a low end RB2.
Yeah.
Just because like he has upside, right? Like moving forward. Now, I'm not giving up on Swift if I have him because I'm not sure. Like if your trade deadline hasn't passed yet and you're thinking about trading him, the only thing about trading him is that I'm not sure what you'll be able to get for him right now, and I feel like you'll be selling for pennies on the dollar. And I just if you can, I just rather hold in case there's like a big boost in playing time. Right at some point, like he has 10 days off now until his next game.
Yeah,
unless someone's offering, what was that?
A lot could change. It's a mini buy.
It's a mini buy. Yeah, and unless someone is offering me, a clear upgrade for my team where I'm just like, all right, well, this is going to help me right now, or you need to make the playoffs in the next 2 weeks. Like I can see moving him, if you still haven't passed the trade deadline. But I prefer not to because he could be like a league winning type of player. It's a very tough situation and people are trying to figure that out. Now, I would say don't trade him for pennies on the dollar. Just if that's the case, those are the type of offers you're getting, I would just hold, and hopefully his snaps go up big time next week.
Yeah, there's no cutting your losses with DeAndre Swift anymore. The losses are way too high. It's just going to be stick with him and see what he can do because we know what he can do. We saw it at the beginning of the season. They've just completely shifted away from him in the ground game. Which I guess makes sense because Jamal Williams, he's not a bad running back. I still think DeAndre Swift is more talented, but
Yeah.
they like Jamal Williams obviously there. He's like, one of the heart and soul players of that team, and they're going to keep using him, and that's okay. I just wish that it was less of a 80-20 or 90-10 on the ground. You know what I'm saying? I wish it was more like a 70-30 or 65-35, something like that.
It's interesting though because they're giving him a lot of the rushing work like in the red zone, like when they get in the 10-yard line, like near the 10-yard line, they're giving the carries to Swift, and he's scored. I think it would have been 3 straight games with a rushing touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was, but yeah,
it wasn't.
By the way, Nyheim Hines, 4 snaps in this game.
Don't know what that's about.
If you still have him, drop him. It was all Devin Singletary in the Bills' backfield, 78% of snaps. James Cook, apparently did not get a big increase this week.
No.
So take that for what it is. Now,
very confusing.
Let's look at this Giants-Cowboys game real quick. Saquon, he's in a slump right now. Since that 35 carry game against the Texans. Why is Zeke going 16 for 92 and a touchdown, but Barkley is going 11 for 39? The entire Giants offense is centered around Saquon, right? Yeah. And it's catching up to them right now. It's one of those situations where, like, okay, if we stop Saquon, most likely we're going to win this game, right? Yeah. That's really what it comes down to, right? They don't have the wide receivers to take over a game. They don't have a quarterback to take over the game. It's one of those situations where let's just stop Saquon. And unfortunately, you might have these type of games with going forward for Saquon. Some teams are going to be stacking the box and they're just going to be forcing you to throw it, which is what the Cowboys did in this game. And, it kind of sucks. You just wish that Saquon is a lot more involved in the passing game. They can get more creative with him, but that's not really happening.
Yeah. Well, Saquon, he had a respectable performance. I mean, 15 points isn't that bad. But when you're the only player on offense, you kind of expect that to be a higher output. You have to consider that going into this game, the Giants, I think they were saying they were going to be missing 4 of their starting offensive linemen. Yes. And then they ended up only missing 3, but they were really banged up on the offensive line. They had nobody at receiver. And Daniel Jones, he's Daniel Jones. You know how I feel about him. So Saquon Barkley, I think he did good for what he was asked to do. I mean, they didn't give him nearly enough touches, I don't think. They only ran him 11 times. And 6 targets, that's good for any other running back. But when Saquon Barkley on the Giants offense, you need to get him more involved. I don't know what happened with Zeke getting 16 carries and going for 92 yards. It just turned back the clock. That red kettle, at the end zone.
Well, it was that one big play that he had, right? Like where Dak was going for a keeper, but then he pitched it to Zeke, and Zeke had an open lane. Like the defense did not expect him to pitch it out to Zeke, and Zeke got the pitch on the right hash, and he took it for I think it was like a 30-yard gain or something like that.
Like that.
Yeah. So that's really what did it for him. But, it's one of those situations where Zeke is going to be turning into Jamal Williams, right? Yeah. Like, it's very possible that happens the rest of the season because he's getting, like, the dirty yards, like, on the ground. And then, when it comes to the goal line, he's going to get the first crack at it. And the Cowboys offense is rolling right now. They're scoring points. They're going to be near the goal line a lot, so,
Cowboys,
he's a little boom bust. But at the end of the day, he could get it done for you.
Yeah. Zeke, I think he has, and this is funny because this is what we were saying coming into the season, but Zeke, he has the floor that you want as an RB2. Tony Pollard is an upside RB2. Tony Pollard can obviously do much better than Zeke with the ball in his hands, but, he has to get those types of touches. He had 18 carries compared to 2 targets and receptions yesterday, which I think you need to use Tony Pollard more in the passing game. Obviously, Tony Pollard can run the ball, but Zeke was running good. It's just going to be a hot hand in this backfield, I think. So, you also have to remember that these outputs are a little bit low because Dallas was in a big slump, going into the second half. They had 7 points heading into the second half. It was a really bad day for them in the first half. But the second half, they got it together. It's CeeDee Lamb looked good. It's just they can use so many different players. They're going to be just like you said about Dak Prescott. He distributes the ball. And the Kellen Moore is a very creative play caller. They're never going to dial in on one player. So the upsides are kind of limited in that sense, but they're all going to be solid fantasy contributors. Ezekiel Elliott, though, I wouldn't expect this on a weekly basis. I think it might go back to Tony Pollard next week. We'll see how that goes.
They did have Tony Pollard this week. 20 touches for Pollard. Like, give me that every week. It's just a low performance. Like, if you tell me you're giving Pollard 20 touches, like, I expect him to go off most weeks, right?
Yeah.
He just didn't in this one. But the usage for Pollard over the last 2 games with Zeke in the lineup, it makes me very happy for Pollard moving forward.
Right. And it's funny because Dallas offsets that increase in touches for Tony Pollard with goal line carries for Ezekiel Elliott, where both of these guys are going to be, relevant because Zeke, he's good for a goal line touchdown every week. It seems
pretty
like.
much.
So,
I would consider Zeke maybe like a borderline RB2 most weeks without buys, and I don't expect this type of efficiency for him. Right? He averaged more than 6 yards a carry, almost 6 yards a carry in this game. But that touchdown upside is going to be there. Like he can be like a poor man's Jamal Williams moving forward.
Yeah, just look at the past 4 weeks. He has 6 touchdowns scored, and he's averaged 14 carries a game. So it's like 14 carries, about 50, 60 yards and a touchdown. That's what he's good for. And we keep seeing that. His average in fantasy points is right around that 16-point mark, which is actually pretty solid, especially considering Tony Pollard being in that backfield and the games that Tony Pollard has had. He's had nice days, even with Tony Pollard popping off. So the Cowboys offense is very good. That's why Zeke is relevant at this point. But if it's going to continue to be that way, he might be startable.
Yeah. All right, let's move to this Vikings Patriots game. Vikings got the win here. Mac Jones, obviously, we talked about him, almost 400 yards passing. Ramondre, and we talked about the Hunter Henry ridiculous overturned touchdown. But Ramondre split carries with Damian Harris 7-5, but he caught 9 of 10 targets for 76 yards.
Yeah,
dude's Austin Eckler out here. All right, every week getting it done in PPR. But Damian Harris did get hurt. I think it was his quad. So keep it. Do you know where the quad is, Zach?
Yes, I know where the quad is.
Okay, cool. Talked about it. It's an inside joke, guys. If you don't get it, you don't get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Damian Harris, he left the game, so keep an eye on that. If he misses time, Ramondre, man, big time upgrade moving forward. He's gonna get 90% of snaps if Damian Harris is out, so he's gonna win people championships pretty much this year.
Yeah. You watch Ramondre Stevenson. The carries and yardage, the yards per carry wasn't fantastic, but when he catches the ball out of the backfield, he's going crazy.
Oh yeah,
he can really catch a run. He's just super athletic. He looks really good. I kind of see now why Bill Belichick is okay with making him the RB1 after all those seasons of not having an RB1, a clear cut. He looks really good, and it helps that Mac Jones is Mac Jones. He's happy to check it down. Mac Jones in the pocket. If you watch him, he looked good last night. But if you watch him in the pocket, he's pretty cautious about taking any type of hit. So if the blitz comes close, he's going down, and that kind of cost him on that hat for the last drive of the half, where not only did Hunter Henry 2 plays earlier not go out of bounds for some reason on that 130-yard catch and run, but then instead of sailing out of the back of the end zone and saving a timeout, Mac Jones just slid down in the pocket because the blitz was there. So that was a little bit questionable. Obviously, he's still a young quarterback. I might have done the same thing. We'll see. But we have that. I've brought that discussion up every week about what I might have done. I'm making fun of him for doing this, but Mac Jones, as long as he's checking it down to Ramondre Stevenson, that seems to be one of his first reads whenever the pressure's there. That's going to be huge. We saw it last night with 10 targets to Ramondre.
No, it was a dumb play to not throw that ball away. Just throw it away.
Because you were only at the 10-yard line. You just have to chuck it. Just get it out of the back of the end zone. That's all you got to do.
Exactly. Someone who couldn't get it done was Dalvin Cook. 22 carries, which is awesome, but only ran for 42 yards, which is unbelievable. Like, to limit Cook to that, like, it seems like the Patriots were like, all right, let's limit Dalvin Cook. But was that really the game plan that they wanted to go with? You know what I'm saying? Like, like they want to limit him, but the Vikings could obviously air it out, and they did. Right? Jefferson still went ham, 9 for 139 and a touchdown. Thielen went off, 9 for 61 and a touchdown. Hawkinson caught a touchdown too. So the Vikings can kill you in a lot of different ways. This offense is very dynamic, and the Patriots just couldn't get it done. And this is a good performance by the Vikings, against a good Patriots defense.
Yeah, and primetime Kirk did not come out to haunt anybody. It's weird. He actually looked good. So that's kind of been like the Amari Cooper curse, the home away with Kirk Cousins, primetime or not. But the Vikings offense, they turn around and really just worked this week compared to, obviously last week against Dallas where they did nothing. It makes me confused as to how Dallas did that. I don't know where that came from, but it looks like that's just a blip on the radar. Vikings offense is good. Justin Jefferson's ridiculous. Adam Thielen, he looked good. I'm not expecting a touchdown from him or 10 targets every week, but, he was able to get it done for you that way. I'm still okay with Dalvin Cook. It was a really inefficient performance. He got 22 carries, and he had 4 catches, too, that only went for 14 yards. I expect that to go way up the production. Like you said about Tony Pollard, if you gave him 20 touches, you'd expect him to go off. If you give Dalvin Cook 26, 27 opportunities, like no way am I expecting him to have 56 scrimmage yards, and that's it. Not even a touchdown. So if that usage continues, I'm not worried about him at all. He's had a few good weeks before this, so don't panic on Dalvin Cook. It's not like you're going to sell him. Some people's trade deadlines have already passed, but don't think about not starting him because this Vikings offense is very good. And with the defense that they're fielding, they're going to be a lot of high-scoring games, which only means more possessions, more touches, more opportunities for every player, not just Dalvin Cook, but everybody on the offense. And we saw that last night.
Hell yeah. Jacoby Myers, he picked up a shoulder injury on his first catch, which was an awesome catch. But he seemed to be limited all game. It limited his playing time to the rest of the game. So, he would have had a big game, I feel like, if that didn't happen.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was a great matchup, too. But monitor that shoulder injury going into next week. At least he has 10 days of rest. Hopefully he'll be fine.
Right.
All right. I think that's it from the games yesterday. Let's go into wide receiver rankings. Let's do it. Let's do it. So these were my rankings coming into Thanksgiving Day. I haven't touched them since then. Okay. Right. So we'll see how this looks out. The first thing I noticed was that Chris Olave was way too low.
I thought he was low putting these together.
I had him at like 27 or something, like something really low. So like that's not right.
I mean, now granted, they are going against 49ers.
Very tough matchup.
Yeah, especially with Andy Dalton at quarterback. I don't know how much I trust that, but
I don't.
I don't trust it. The Saints have to move the ball just a little bit, and Alvin Kamara's kind of been quiet these past few weeks. Maybe he's due for a game, but Chris Olave is very good.
I love Olave, but he can be fine.
Yeah, in terms of fantasy, I love his talent, but the quarterback situation is just no good right now.
So Justin Jefferson at 1, that worked out.
Yep.
Tyreek Hill against Houston at number 2. Stephon Diggs at 3. He did pretty well.
Yep.
Fantasy-wise. Devontae Adams at Seattle at 4. Dude's been balling.
I feel like that's a really good start this week.
Dude, I feel like Devontae, like the way he did his thing against Denver last week, like he's on a mission right now.
Yeah. To save the 3-7 Raiders. I don't think he can do it, but he's going to do his best.
He ain't going to save that, but he's going to save fantasy managers. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. What kind of terror is he on right now? 17 targets, 14 targets, 13 targets the last 3 weeks. And he's caught 26 of them. And he's gone for over 120 yards in each of the past 3 games, over 140 in 2 of the past 3. And he has 5 touchdowns. Like he's leading receivers in touchdowns. I hope this terror continues. And this has been against pretty good defenses. Like Indianapolis isn't anything to sneeze at.
Yeah, dude.
And Denver, we know, Pat Surtain, he was catching a few words from Devontae at the end of the game last week.
Yeah.
One more matchup against Seattle, who's been all right against receivers, but
it doesn't matter.
The way Devontae Adams is playing, he's matchup proof and he's quarterback proof. Derek Carr, he can elevate the play of any quarterback that he's with.
Exactly. AJ Brown, I have him here at number 5 against Green Bay. He runs most of his routes against Jair Alexander, but Alexander hasn't been great as of late. And I don't see Hurts shying away from targeting Brown in Jair's coverage, and quarterbacks aren't really shying away from him, targeting him. They're targeting him at the second highest rate, among the 3 corners that they have, starting corners that they have. So I'm not worried about him at all. So AJ Brown, I feel like, without Dallas Goedert there, we saw him and Devontae Smith get a huge target share last week. In the first game without Dallas Goedert, and I feel like moving forward, AJ Brown has a tremendous ceiling.
Yeah, I like AJ Brown every week. He's been quiet the past few weeks. I think was it? Forget, was it last week that he had a bad game? I forget. Well, yeah, against the Colts he had 9, and then the bad games against Washington where he only had 1 catch, 1 for 7 yards. So he's due. He's going to do fine just against the Packers. The Packers have not been very good. They look good against my Cowboys, and then they're back to being the same old Packers. So I think that this is a good matchup for AJ Brown, especially on Sunday night. Eagles have been good. There's no reason to think that he's not going to be able to do his thing. You're starting him as a wide receiver 1, solid wide receiver 1 at least, with high-end wide receiver 1 upside every week, even against Jair Alexander. Like we said, he hasn't looked like the Jair Alexander we're used to seeing. And
it's true.
So
and he's not shadowing either. So
no.
Not that it matters.
It wouldn't matter with AJ Brown. AJ Brown's one of those receivers. It doesn't matter if he gets shadowed or not. If he was going up against, I don't know who's a good corner, Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah.
If say he was going up against a guy like Darius Slay, who's on his team, it's not going to matter who shadows him. It's a 50-50. I think it's better than 50-50 with AJ Brown. You're okay throwing it to him regardless of who's covering him, just because he's that kind of talent.
CD at number 6 here. Amon-Ra at 7. Should have had him higher. Jalen Waddle at 8 against Houston. They've given up the least amount of fantasy points to wide receivers over the last 8 weeks. Tough matchup. but you can't count against these Miami receivers. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
you just have to start them. And this is like my confidence in terms of like, what is my confidence starting them this week? And Jalen Waddle, like, he can have that game against any team pretty much.
Yeah. Just to talk about, you just kind of glossed over Amari St. Brown because we talked about him. Do you think you'll be moving him up in the rankings moving forward? Like next week, you think he'll be top 5, 4?
Potentially. It's tough.
In a good
It's tough
matchup.
because it's tough because you got JJ, you got Hill. I'm still gonna rank Diggs above him. Devontae, like if he's continuing to be on a tear, you got to rank him above him too.
Yeah.
Outside of that, the only guy I can see myself putting over him is maybe Jamar Chase, who I have at 9. I only have Jamar Chase at 9 because he's making his return this week. It's a good matchup, but like if they limit him a little bit, that's what I'm a little bit concerned about. Not too concerned because I still have him in my top 10. That's why I have him lower than I normally would. Because it's a great matchup though, so I'm firing him up. But I can see him maybe being there. AJ Brown even, with Dallas Goedert being out. CD, I'll probably be ranking Amon-Ra St. Brown rest of the season over CD. I would say over Jalen Waddle maybe. But Waddle, he comes through, man. He gets those 2 touchdowns sometimes, and he has those huge monster games, which is awesome. But yeah, Amon-Ra, the way he's been playing and the way he's being targeted lately, I think he'll be top 5.
All right. That makes sense. Yeah. And with Jamar Chase, we're kind of moving through the rankings, but at 9. I actually saw a report that they are just going to ease him into the offense, something like that. I'm not sure if that's going to be like this week during practices or if that's going to be in the game. I think even if he's eased in, he's the type of receiver where he can get 5 or 6 targets a game, turn that into 100 yards pretty easy.
Exactly. Especially against Tennessee, it could easily happen. And with Tennessee, it's like, if they choose to take a wide receiver, they have so many weapons that it's going to be tough for them to take wide receivers away. So I had DeAndre Hopkins at 10. It looks like Kyler is back this week. He's going to be back this week, so I moved Hopkins back into the top 10 against the Chargers, who haven't been great. This is probably going to be a high scoring game too. So fire Hop up, Kyler's favorite receiver.
Yeah. I don't think there's any reason to not start him. I think he had his first quiet performance of this season last week.
Without Kyler.
Predictably, without Kyler Murray and against a good 49ers defense.
It was still a decent game, though. I think he did all right. Like, if I'm not mistaken, he still had 18 points.
By his standard, it was
9 for 91.
But from what we had seen.
Look at his games so far this year. 10 for 103, 12 for 159, and a touchdown. And against Seattle in week 9, 4 for 36. That was a quiet game. And then he comes out and goes 10 for 98 and 9 for 91. The dude is on a mission, man. Like, he's been balling since he returned. I wasn't expecting him to be a wide receiver 1, but he is pretty much right now.
I think with Kyler Murray coming back, that could get better too. There's no reason not to start him. It was interesting to see how he was able to do it with Colt McCoy last week. It's still quiet, like I said, by his standards from what we've seen, but things could be really good down the stretch. He could be, I don't want to call him a league winner because he came back pretty relatively early to be called a league winner at this point. But if you were stashing him on your bench, you're extremely happy with what you've seen from him.
Amari Cooper moved him up to number 11 here.
Finally,
he's at home. Against Tampa. Listen, if he has a good game at home, this is gonna be hilarious. Like, I just want him to go throughout the rest of the season and have only good games when he's at home and only bad games when he's away. That would be the best. Like, I would love that narrative to just continue. But against Tampa isn't the best passing defense in the world. I think that it's gonna be interesting because this game, I never know what to expect out of Tampa and their offense. But this has the chance to be a high scoring game.
I think it can be. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Jacoby Brissett, end of starting tenure performance where he just goes off. And then I bet Jacoby Brissett could go off, maybe. I could just see this happening. He goes off, and then Deshaun Watson comes back and doesn't play well, and people will be clamoring for Jacoby Brissett to come back in. I could see something like that happening. That'd be ridiculous. I think Amari Cooper is a very good receiver, and like we talked about, he's at home. So that's good news for him. I'd like to see him up here at 11. Last week we had him at 20. We moved him up to like 14. But he's been quietly one of the best fantasy receivers outside of consistency. He has been consistent, but he's been winning you weeks. So that's all you can really ask for. I like Amari Cooper at 11. And rest of the season with Deshaun Watson coming back, we'll see how he gets targeted next week. He could potentially move up even higher.
Tampa has given up the 6th most fantasy points to perimeter wide receivers this year. So he's at home, and it's a good matchup.
Yeah.
Terry McLaurin at number 12 here against Atlanta at home. This is a Swiss cheese type of matchup, and that's what you want. Atlanta has been giving up the 9th most fantasy points to wide receivers on the perimeter over the last 4 weeks, the 8th most this season. So McLaurin has a really, really good matchup. He's been hyper targeted. So fire him up. I liked him as a wide receiver 1 last week. That didn't really work out so well, but I think this week he comes through.
Yeah, this is the type of matchup you want, for Terry McLaurin. And the way the Commanders have been playing, there's no reason not to start him. It's actually been pretty promising what we've seen from Taylor Heineke and the offense overall. It looks a lot better, and Terry McLaurin's finally getting those targets that he deserves. We talked about that a couple of weeks in a row now, how Carson Wentz wasn't really, targeting Terry McLaurin, but now he's getting those targets. I like him as a low-end wide receiver 1, a high-end wide receiver 2. Ideally, I would like to play him as a wide receiver 2 in my lineup, but if he has to be a wide receiver 1, sometimes that's the way it works, and he has that type of upside to be a wide receiver 1. He's not going to compete with guys like A.J. Brown. He's not going to compete with guys like Tyreek Hill, but he's going to have a nice enough floor and a attractive enough ceiling to, kind of warrant wide receiver 1 consideration moving forward the rest of the season, as long as Taylor Heineke stays healthy.
I have Mike Evans up next here. Mike Evans also has a pretty good matchup. We talked about this Cleveland-Tampa matchup. Cleveland has not been good on the perimeter. Mike Evans runs most of his routes on the perimeter, and they've given up the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers on the perimeter. So Mike Evans has a chance of having a big game. I could totally see, moving him up and playing him over Terry McLaurin, pretty easily. But McLaurin has just an even better matchup than Evans, and he's been the one hyper targeted. And Mike Evans also has, Godwin to kind of take some targets away. But he's been getting it done, for the most part with Brady. They're coming off the bye week, and I feel like, if this is a high scoring game, Mike Evans can do his thing.
Yeah, and does it feel like it's been ages since we've seen the Bucs play for some reason?
Maybe
it's because they were the 9:30 game in Germany.
They're 9:30.
Maybe that's why it feels like forever. But it feels like forever because I remember we were talking about, how are we going to rank, Rashad White and Leonard Fournette when they come back? And now we're sitting here talking about the receivers. I'm like, when was the last time we saw these guys play? It feels like it's been forever. But Mike Evans, coming off a bye, with Tom Brady at quarterback, I don't feel like they're going to come out sluggish. I think that the Bucs are going to be just fine. I like a high-scoring game between Cleveland and Tampa Bay. That would be great to see. Mike Evans, he's been quiet, I think, the past couple of weeks that he has played, at least compared to what we're used to seeing from him. But he can definitely get it done for Tom Brady's a quarterback. He likes throwing it to him. Chris Godwin's been the target magnet. He's been getting most of the targets recently. But Mike Evans, you can't rule out a touchdown, just a jump ball, contested catch touchdown every week. I think Mike Evans is good. And we haven't seen the consistency as a wide receiver 1 just yet, but as wide receiver 2, Mike Evans has been really nice for you in your lineup, and he's going to continue to do that.
I really like the matchup this week. I also like T. Higgins' matchup as well against Tennessee. We talked about Jamar Chase, but if you look at like the matchups for these guys, like on the perimeter, Tennessee has gotten a little bit better over the last 4 weeks. They went from giving up the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers to give up the 18th most in the last 4 weeks. So they've definitely improved. However, if you saw what some wide receivers were able to do against Tennessee over the last couple of weeks, Christian Watson, right, got the 2 touchdowns last week. Mm-hmm. There are situations where Tennessee can give up some points. So, when you have talents like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, Tennessee has got it done when there's like a clear alpha, and they could like kind of take that alpha away. But in this case, if both these guys are playing, it might be a little bit tough, and both these guys might be able to get it done.
Yeah, especially with Joe Burrow playing and the offense looking much better than it did at the beginning of the season. The Bengals were on a roll. Did they have their bye or no? No, they didn't have their bye. They played the Steelers. That's what it was. Yeah, and they look good there. Yeah, they look good there. So it's pretty much a bye playing Steelers, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, the Bengals offense is back to what we want it to be. It's looking like they're getting primed for a playoff run like they had last season. Same record this year, this time, as they did last year at this time. So you can't count out the Bengals offense in any type of game with Joe Burrow quarterback and these 2 receivers running routes. T. Higgins, if Jamar Chase is going to be drawing that coverage, I wouldn't be surprised to see T. Higgins have a good game. And maybe the Titans figure out a way to lock up both of them and Tyler Boyd, now that both receivers are back ahead of him, after doing nothing with the opportunity to, get some more targets the past few weeks with Jamar Chase out. Maybe Tyler Boyd will have his breakout game.
I can see it happening because
Yeah.
Tennessee has given up the 8th most fantasy points to slot wide receivers over the last 8 weeks. So
Yeah.
it could definitely happen this week with both these guys, with all three of these guys healthy. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett have them at 15 and 16. I feel like I always have these guys back to back in rankings.
Yeah, you have to.
I just prefer Metcalf because of his big playability. Tyler Lockett also has a big playability, but he just like goes down as soon as he catches it. But the Raiders, they're a bad team on defense. They're not,
Yeah.
especially in the secondary, not great. Especially in the slot. Like Tyler Lockett runs a lot of his routes in the slot. Even though I have Metcalf over Tyler Lockett, like the matchup actually, is preferential towards Lockett because the Raiders have given up the most fantasy points to slot wide receivers this year. Lockett runs a lot of his routes out of the slot. I'll give you the exact number here. So far this year, Tyler Lockett has run about 40% of his routes from the slot. So, he runs majority on the outside, but runs a good amount in the slot, and he can easily, take one, to the house and get a long touchdown against the Raiders. I like them. These guys this week, and I like Geno Smith to potentially throw for 3 touchdowns in this game.
Yeah, against the Raiders defense, it's just been atrocious. I'm surprised. You'll look at last week and say, "Oh, well, they held the Broncos to 16 points." Well, that's the Broncos. They haven't been over 18 points in, I don't think, any game but one this season. I'm not sure if that's true, but Broncos offense has been terrible. So don't give the Raiders too many props for that performance. Otherwise, they've been getting torched. DK Metcalf is a matchup nightmare for any type of corner that's going to be covering him. So, and Tyler Lockett, I call him, he's very quarterback friendly. He was with Russell Wilson. He's continued to be that with Geno Smith. Both of these guys are like, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are like the same receiver in terms of their production. If they score a touchdown, they're going to be a mid to high wide receiver 2. Otherwise, it's low wide receiver 2. The floor is there. The ceiling isn't very high, but you know what you're getting with them week in and week out. And that's really all you can ask for from a wide receiver 2. And that's where we have him ranked.
Chris Godwin here at 17. Chris Godwin's been getting it done. He's been getting the targets.
Yeah.
And, expect that to continue. Now, if you look at what Cleveland has done against wide receivers, they have definitely been better defending slot wide receivers this year. There have been some slot wide receivers who've been able to get it done against them. And, Chris Godwin obviously has a talent to be one of those guys. But so far this year, Cleveland has been one of the best teams against the slot. They've given up the least amount of fantasy points to slot wide receivers. Maybe you temper expectations a little bit on Chris Godwin this week, but, you started him.
You obviously started him. He looked good, going into the bye too. He caught his first touchdown of the season from Tom Brady. So that was good news to see. And he only got 8 targets compared to, he was averaging, I think, 11 or 12 the 4 weeks before that. But it looks like he's going to continue to be a part of this offense that Tom Brady is looking for each and every week. And if the Buccaneers could be making a playoff run, these receivers might have to turn it up a little bit. And the offense might end up looking better than it has, moving forward. Because right now, what are they? They're 5-5. And I think they're atop the NFC South. So if they want to put some distance between them, this offense could, take matters in their own hands. And they could get better. With Tom Brady quarterback, there's always that chance.
Maybe I should move this guy ahead of Chris Godwin. Maybe. I feel pretty confident in Keenan Allen this week.
Yeah.
He ran a route on 74% of dropbacks last week in his first game back. He didn't suffer a setback. That's great.
That's a low bar to clear, but we got it.
He had 29% target share, right? Mike Williams is banged up, and he's going up against the Cardinals defense, giving up the 6th most fantasy points to slot wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. And they've been vulnerable to slot wide receivers all year long. And if you look at what Keenan has done this year, in his limited snaps, like he's run a route on 65% of his routes from the slot this season. So this should be a relatively high-scoring game as well. Preciser has this game at a 50-point total, and they have this finishing as a one-point game to finish. So that's what we like. Close, high-scoring games for maximum fantasy production.
Yep. With Keenan Allen, it's clear Justin Herbert was happy to have him back. Obviously he wasn't hyper-utilized, but he was definitely getting the targets. It's been a while since Herbert's been able to throw to Keenan Allen, so I'm not surprised that he had a relatively quiet performance last week. But now that they have this week of practice, he should be playing. He should be practicing in full after playing well last week, going against Arizona, who's been a pretty bad defense. I think that Keenan Allen's in for a big day. He could return to wide receiver 1 status. We'll see how that goes. Justin Herbert looked a lot better just having Keenan Allen on the field. That was a big thing. I think that Justin Herbert, I called him a buy, a couple of weeks in a row these past few weeks because going into these playoffs, they have a really good schedule. I think that's going to, hold up. Keenan Allen's going to be there. Josh Palmer suddenly looks like he's going to be a decent complement to Keenan Allen. Not that he wasn't before, but he showed some upside last week. You'll have to pay attention to him defense as well. So I think that Keenan Allen, he could get back to wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
I think this is a conservative ranking, which makes sense
I
because
think
he
so.
was quiet last week.
Yeah, well, listen, man, he still went over 90 yards. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And like he just didn't score a touchdown, pretty much. Like, it was a pretty good performance for his first game back, and they did limit his snaps. So all
Yep.
that's all good. That's what you want, right? It's like
Yeah.
you play limited snaps, you still got it done. Now you'll probably be 100% playing on you're running around on every single drop back. Good matchup. Love it. I love
Yep.
Keenan Allen this week.
Yeah.
All right, let's try to speed up through these rankings a little bit. So we can make it through and take advantage of our Black Friday. Brandon Ayuk at number 19 against New Orleans. This is a good matchup. New Orleans has been not great against perimeter wide receivers this year. Looking at it right now, they've been better as of late over the last 4 weeks. But over the last 8 weeks, they've given up the second most fantasy points to perimeter wide receivers. So they've gotten better, but still, like Brandon Ayuk has been getting it done. Didn't get the targets last week, but 2 touchdowns. So
yeah,
Brandon Ayuk is someone like it's like you can't bench this guy, right?
No.
Same thing with Christian Watson. I have him at 20. It's like this guy scored 5 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Like, how do you bench him? You know what I'm saying? Like, these types of players, like, it's hard because how do you reconcile this with guys that you like? You know what I'm saying? Like, the guys I have him ranked over, Christian Kirk, Juju, Michael Pittman, Paris Campbell, Devontae Smith, Chris Olave, Deebo Samuel, and like these guys, like you want to start those guys, but it's really hard to start them against, over guys who've been getting it done lately.
Yeah. Well, with Brandon Ayuk, he got a bunch of targets the few weeks where Deebo Samuel's out. He still got targets when Deebo Samuel came back. And then last week, he got 2 targets and turned them both into touchdowns. He missed that 1 touchdown. I forget who it was against the Chargers. Yeah. He missed that 1 touchdown catch. And that was, that was bad. But then he came back and he made up for it. If he's going to get targeted, he's going to score a touchdown. That's the way it was last week. So I like Brandon Ayuk. He seems to be a bigger part of this offense. Last season, it was Jimmy Garoppolo, hyper targeting, giving Deebo Samuel all the touches. This time it's Brandon Ayuk's turn. I think that it makes sense to have him over Deebo Samuel in rankings. And in Christian Watson, same thing. Aaron Rodgers happy to throw into him, to be throwing to him. And he's really the only weapon they have in the receiving game right now. I mean, Allen Lazard, I guess you could say, is there, but Christian Watson's just an athletic freak. And he had his coming out party against Dallas. He continued against Tennessee, which is a good defense. Against Philadelphia, it's another tall task, another tough test to see how he'll perform, but I like it. I like him to, get it done because, like we talked about, he's really the only one that's moving the ball downfield and scoring touchdowns for the Packers at this point. Aaron Jones is there, and, he's capable of doing what he needs to do. But if you want to get a big play, Christian Watson, I think, is the guy you want to go to. And that's what Aaron Rodgers has been doing.
He can win your week like he's been doing, right?
Yep.
Christian Kirk, I have him here at number 21. Excuse me. Like, Baltimore is much better on the perimeter than they are against slot wide receivers. So this isn't as bad of a matchup as you might think it is. Baltimore's given up the second most fantasy points to slot wide receivers this year, the 13th most over the last 4 weeks, last 8 weeks. So it's not terrible. They've been a lot better on the perimeter. So Christian Kirk, fire him up. I'm not so worried about it. I'm worried about the Baltimore defense looking good, and kind of limiting this entire offense. But Christian Kirk, he's been getting it done for you. Continue to start him. Juju, it looks like he's going to be back this week. He got a full practice in, so it looks like he's going to be out of the concussion protocol. He's going to be ready to go. And the Rams, they're not really a defense that I really worry about. You know what I'm saying? Like, they've been not great, and I think Mahomes can potentially tear them up at home.
Mahomes can tear anybody up at home.
Yeah, exactly. And with Juju coming back, Kadarius Toney being hurt, like, he's an afterthought at this point. Juju is going to go back to what he was doing, before he got concussed.
Yeah, he had 3 really good weeks before he got concussed, in terms of targets and production. 22 points, 25 points, 18 points in PPR. And then he went from 5 targets to 8 targets to 12 targets. He upped his reception total from 5, 7 to 10 each of the 3 weeks. He didn't score a touchdown in the 3rd week, but before they had 2 touchdowns back to back and 200 yards games before that 12 target, 10 catch, 88 yard performance. So he was doing his thing. He looked really good. Before Kadarius Toney came in, and all the hype was around him because Juju was out, but it doesn't look like Kadarius Toney's going to be the guy that we wanted him to be. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to continue to get it done. He's still clearly the wide receiver 1 there, even though I had high hopes for Kadarius Toney. I know you did too, because you started him.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Jacoby Myers at number 23 here. I obviously had high hopes for him this week, but he got hurt early, unfortunately, after a really good catch. He would have had a good game, I feel like, against that cheese defense. Minnesota was terrible against slot wide receivers, but whatever. That was yesterday.
Yeah.
Michael Pittman, I have him at 24. Paris Campbell at 25. Pittsburgh's defense, they come and go. We'll see what they could do, but they are not great against wide receivers.
No, they're not. And it's funny because, TJ Watt's back, and I think they had Minka Fitzpatrick too. They had both of them on the field the first time in a few weeks, or at least maybe the season. I'm not sure. It's been a while though. And it was funny because they came back and they had one of their worst performances of the season against the Bengals last week. So we'll see how they do. Like you said, they are come and go. This is a much easier matchup for them. We'll see how it goes. The offensive line for Indianapolis has been shoddy at best.
Yeah. Between the two, Paris Campbell has a much better matchup. Michael Pittman on the left side. The Steelers have been decent on the left side lately. But the Steelers have been giving up the fourth most fantasy points to slot wide receivers this year. Tyler Boyd couldn't take advantage of it last week, but hopefully Paris Campbell can this week.
Yeah.
Devontae Smith at 26th. This might be a little bit low for Devontae. It just so happens that I liked a lot of the matchups before him. I feel like he finishes higher than 26 this week because of that target share going up. But we'll see. Chris Olave, against San Francisco. Where are you putting Olave here? I have him at 27, which seems super low.
Yeah.
Like
I think it's very low.
Look at the guys ahead of him. Who would you start? Don't say Jacoby Myers because he played yesterday.
Yeah, I'm not going to say Jacoby Myers. I would put him
besides
over.
him, who would you put him over?
I put him over Pittman. I put him over Campbell. I put him over Devontae Smith. I'd want to put him over Juju Smith-Schuster, but Patrick Mahomes has made him fantasy relevant. He's been very good when they play together the past few weeks. So I would kind of slide him in at 23.
Would you have started him over Jacoby? Probably, right?
I feel like I would have, but Jacoby Myers, I do like Jacoby Myers. Don't get it mixed up. I'm a Jacoby Myers guy. I think
so. You would have had him a 23, 24 as a low end wide receiver too. Basically.
Yeah, that's where I would.
So I'm not too far off then. I'm not crazy far off. If I had to choose between Paris Campbell and Olave, I'm choosing Paris Campbell.
I would choose Olave.
Pittman, I would probably go Olave, I would say. But even though I have, maybe I should have Paris Campbell over Pittman this week because I really like his matchup.
It might seem very low with Chris Olave having him there, but we talked about, Andy Dalton and going against a 49ers defense. It's just been crazy.
In San Francisco. Just, I don't feel great about the situation, honestly.
No. It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Deebo Samuel at 28, Alan Lazard at 29. Courtland Sutton at 30. So yes, I am starting Christian Watson over Alan Lazard. Are you?
Yeah.
Lazard did get the targets last week, and Christian Watson didn't.
Well, Lazard has the targets, but who's getting the touchdowns?
Boom. There you go. That's the analysis that we need to hear.
So there's that's the thing. So sometimes you could say, oh, well, is a guy touchdown dependent after he scores 5 touchdowns in 2 weeks? I wouldn't call that touchdown dependent. I think that, he's getting it done anyway. Obviously, the target share hasn't been there like Alan Lazard, but you watch the game, the flow of the game. Christian Watson isn't touchdown dependent. He's a big play machine.
Yes.
You could say Gabe Davis is touchdown dependent. Maybe that's true, but he's also a big play machine. So with that kind of production, you have to rank him over guys who've been consistently getting 7-8 targets a game, but only putting up 10 points. So it's like
exactly
that's the way it has to be. Alan Lazard is not a ceiling fantasy football player. And I wouldn't even call him a floor fantasy football player. I mean, he's got the targets recently.
Yeah, not at this point.
But he's not
Watson there.
He's not a very good receiver.
Yeah.
Obviously, Aaron Rodgers was in love with him. He was campaigning for him. I think it was a couple of years back. But Alan Lazard, he's a plug and play. I'm gonna call him last resort, but he's definitely not your first choice in your lineup.
Courtland Sutton, I have him at 30 here. It looks like Judy might not play again this week because he hasn't practiced yet.
Yeah.
So we'll see what that looks like against Carolina. All right, let's move on to tight ends.
It could be a really bad game between Denver and Carolina because this is a good Carolina defense.
It might be the shittiest game I've ever seen.
Bad offense and then a bad Carolina offense against a good Denver defense. It could be so low scoring. Man,
it's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
All right, let's move into tight ends real quick. We're gonna go over this quickly. All right, so we can get you guys back to your day. Travis Kelce at number 1, obviously. Mark Andrews at number 2, followed by TJ Hockenson. Had a decent day yesterday. His routes went down just a little bit. 75% route participation, not amazing, but hopefully that goes back up next week.
Yeah. He still turned in a tight end 1 performance. So
yeah. It might even be top 5, top 6 performance.
Yeah.
When it's all said and done.
Pat Fryer he tied right up with Hunter Henry. So they both put up, I think, 15.3 PPR points exactly.
Hunter Henry would have had that second touchdown, man.
He should have. Yeah.
Pat Fryermuth at number 4. He's in every week, top 5 tight end. Dalton Schultz, caught 2 touchdowns yesterday, which is awesome. Good for him. Whoever started Dalton Schultz, you had yourself a day. Tyler Higbee, his route participation went way up last week in the first game without Cooper Kupp. He's back at around 90% route participation against Kansas City. Good matchup. They're going to have to throw the ball no matter who the quarterback is. I think it's going to be, what's his name? I keep forgetting his name. The Rams quarterback. Bryce Perkins. Higbee, start him up.
Yeah.
Just do it.
He's going to be a volume-based play.
Exactly.
We know,
especially a PPR guy.
Yeah.
If you don't play in PPR, maybe you don't start him.
Yeah. We know he gets the volume. He's gotten the volume before. He doesn't do much with it, but in terms of catching the ball, if he catches 6 passes, you're happy because chances are it's going for about 50 yards, and that's 11 points. That's a low end tight end 1 performance. So
8 catches, 44 yards. That's what I'm saying this week.
You see it? Yep. All right.
Gerald Everett got him at number 7 here. It looks like he's going to be good to go this week against Arizona, which is an amazing matchup. So if you have Gerald Everett, make sure you fire him up. George Kittle against New Orleans. I have him down here because this is a very tough matchup. I know he caught 2 touchdowns last week. He caught 2 touchdowns last week, right?
Yes,
he did. Yeah. But it was against Arizona. So maybe Everett will do that this week. But George Kittle, very tough matchup. He goes from one of the best matchups to one of the toughest matchups. So I like these other guys over Kittle this week. If you're in a non-PPR, maybe I'll play Kittle over Higbee. But in a PPR, I'm playing Higbee over Kittle. Then Greg Dulcich at number 9 against Carolina. He's a good tight end, man. I feel like he's underperforming the last 2 weeks, but he's getting targeted down the field. He's getting those air yards. I feel like at some point, he's going to have a blow-up game. So I like Dulcich there. And then Foster Moore at number 10, followed by David Njoku at number 11. David Njoku, the reason why I have him so low here is because his routes weren't all the way up last week. I think he was only at 40% route participation, but he was targeted at a decent rate.
Right.
If he comes back this week at full strength, you got to move him up a little bit, but this is a good matchup against Tampa Bay. So if you had Njoku, I'm cool firing him up, maybe over Foster Moreau, but Foster Moreau also has a good matchup against Seattle. So that's kind of the reason why I like Foster Moreau over Njoku, Foster Moreau's running around 90% of dropbacks. Okay.
Yeah.
Followed by Juwan Johnson. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Consider with David Njoku, I wouldn't worry if he has a bad week this week, because change is on the way at the quarterback position. David Njoku, if he's not back this week, maybe next week, whatever happens this week might not, stick.
You know what though? Njoku was doing his thing with
he was
Brissett earlier in the year before he got hurt. And I feel like he was trending up even more. He would have had a higher ceiling if he didn't get hurt because he was on fire.
Yeah, he was doing good, and he's super athletic, and we've been waiting for that, his whole career. We loved him as a talent. Obviously, he just hasn't been getting the targets, or he hasn't been on the field enough. I think that he could really mesh with Deshaun Watson. If this offense gets better, he could be a big part of it because he's a really nice big target down the field.
Agreed. Juwan Johnson at number 12, Cole Kmet at 13 against the Jets. Tough matchup. We don't know if Justin Fields is playing this week. Unfortunately, we have no idea. We don't know yet. But Evan Ingram. Secret. Yeah, they're keeping it a secret. Evan Ingram against Baltimore at number 14, followed by Hayden Hurst, Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox, did he do anything yesterday? Not really. Right?
I saw 1 catch from him. I didn't see
I don't think
anything
he did much
fancy
yesterday.
Noteworthy. Yeah. Let's see what he had. Yeah, 2 catches, 17 yards.
Yeah, okay.
He's not startable.
So this rankings came through on to Dawson Knox. Tyler Conklin, Cameron Brate, Taysom Hill, and Mike Gesicki.
On this back half of tight end rankings, they're all pretty much lumped into one ranking, just not good.
Taysom Hill, you might want to move him up just because, if you want to just shot in the dark, he had a bunch of carries last week. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Did he out carry Alvin Kamara? I think he did.
I don't know.
I think
last week.
I think.
Oh, there were 9 carries for 52 yards. Yeah, I think that might be the case. Now that I'm looking at it, let me see.
Yeah, Taysom Hill had 9 yards. Oh no. Kamara had 12.
12 for 42. Still, he did more with his carries.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna call it here, guys. We hope you guys had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back. I'll be back live on Sunday morning. We're gonna be going over a bunch of start sit questions and all that kind of stuff. So make sure you tune in. If you want the full rankings, they're already up on our Patreon page. You can check the description here, and you can click those. Click the link in the description for the Patreon. The links will be up. The rankings will be up there. I can't even talk right now.
Very good.
We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys back on Monday with the takeaway show. All right, take it easy. Bye-bye. See ya.